All right, anxiety. I say this often because it's an everyday experience for me. I think anxiety is at epidemic proportions. There is so much worry, fear, trepidation about the way the world is right now, and I see it a lot with kids too. It's an everyday experience for me. It's the specific phobias, it's the generalized anxiety. There is just a ton of somewhat debilitating, life-changing anxiety out there over the past 10, 20 years. So we could speculate on why that is and everything, but it is a real thing that people are afraid of what might happen next, and we don't do real well with that. Some of the risks for that, childhood symptoms on that, they found some set points with anxiety. There are some kids that are naturally hesitant about the world and entering in that. So that tends to be a set point in the more of a biological thing than we were talking about with the depression. Shyness is what we'll call that when we're younger. Usually. Trauma can do that. If you have gone through a bad experience, the fear of it might happen again. It's a safety thing to have negativity and trauma and pain imprint on our brains to protect us, to see that it doesn't happen again. Back in the old days, if you thought that the saber-toothed tiger was a cute thing and you go up and it bites your hand off, it's a good thing to have that imprinted on your mind, not to do that anymore. Right? That leads to poverty and homelessness, substance abuse, divorce, illness, all of those kind of things like that. Because if something bad is going to happen, it might happen again is the belief. And that hits home real heavy and it sticks. And that's where a lot of that anxiety would come from. And anxiety is imagination based, so sometimes you don't even need the experience. Just the thought of the possibility of the experience is enough. The point is, we're here now, what's going to happen in the future? And the anxiety driven person is going to say, I don't know, but I think it's going to be bad. And I'll get into something I think fascinating the research has shown what's on the other side of that. Medication side effects can do some of that. Here's one that most of you are female in here. One of the things, more female than male. And you start to wonder, like, why is that? Why is it more of a female gender role type anxiety kind of a thing than the men? And it was suggested to me one time because men don't think real well. And I said, well, yeah, maybe that's the case. But actually, there's a line, if you've ever read The Grapes of Wrath, there's a line at the end of The Grapes of Wrath that I was aware of, and I think this probably has some truth to that too, is Ma is talking in The Grapes of Wrath. She says, like, well, the women live in their heads and the men live in their hands. And I think there's some truth in that men tend to be more action-oriented. We do something, and women tend to do that more. You think about it more, and men are more apt to take action. Which is why, if you've ever been in this situation, right, is that you want to talk to a man about something that's on your heart, that something's been difficult, and you just want him to listen, and we jump into telling you what to do, which is a mistake, right? Which is a mistake. Like, I just want some support. I just want you to listen to me and everything. And, well, here's what you ought to do, is you ought to go in and talk to your boss and everything like that. I don't want you to tell me what to do. I want to just share it with it, right? Because I think we're a little more geared in that way. There might be other reasons for that I don't know, right? Family history of anxiety too. I heard it said one time that anxiety is like a cult in the family. And where you see one bit of anxiety, there's likely to be more. And I've found that to be true, so I get presented with a young person with anxiety, and you start poking around a little bit, who's who, and then you go, well, Mom, hello, and I want you involved with this as well. Just the other night, it was a specific phobia thing with a dog, everything, and this girl was actually making good progress, and the mom she was showing more, oh, that dog's dangerous, oh, that dog, I don't know, like, okay, all right. Hello, maybe you can leave. I'll talk to mom a little bit with it. So it tends to run in families in that way. Multiple kinds of anxieties, don't need to go over those. I think you probably understand a lot of those. Generalized anxiety is the slow burn anxiety. It's like always kind of there and in every situation, especially new situations. Panic disorder, something happens and it's the freak out. It's the people who run out, can't do things, have to go home. The phobias are specific and they're usually after events. Get bit by a dog, afraid of dog. Get stung by a bee, afraid of bees. Those kind of specific things is what that is. Separation anxiety, the discomfort of being alone and all of the threats that that might mean. Post-traumatic stress disorder is it's after some powerful incident. We'll talk about that in its own then later. And obsessive compulsive disorder, anxiety type thing, is an interesting one because the obsession is a thought part of that. So you get stuck on a certain thing and it's fear related. Then the compulsion is actually the cure for the obsession. But it's a bad cure. If you got a germ thing, oh, the germs, I'm going to get sick, and then you realize, hey, but if I wash my hands 20 times, oh, I feel good. Now that's the compulsion, and that the solution to the anxiety is not a good solution, and so you have to redo that. What to do about anxiety? Here, it's another thing to write down. This is very important. Anxiety feeds on two things, and how we do this determines, in a large extent, how we're going to be with anxiety. Anxiety feeds on the idea of comfort and certainty. If we don't handle the discomfort of the unknown well, if we don't handle the uncertainty of life, because the truth is, and we don't like to admit this a lot, we don't know what's going to happen next. And if we're uncomfortable with that, then anxiety is going to run the show. If we're comfortable with, I don't know what's going to happen next, but I think we're okay, right? Or it might be a little uncomfortable, there might be some awkwardness involved, then we're going to fight the anxiety off. So it hinges on those two concepts to a large degree. That's what you're fighting. Make sense so far with that? Comfort, fear of discomfort, and the uncertainty. And all right, here. And I said about the imagination before, and imagination can go wild with it. I've heard some people that, what do you think might happen? Give me your worst case scenario. Like, I'm glad I asked. Your fear, like, whoa, way out there, and then this will happen, and this will happen, and this might happen, that might happen, that might happen, and it ends with, the original stimuli is going outside, and it ends in your slow death in a hospital because the bee stung, and maybe you got a thing, and maybe you got a bit, and maybe, and all that, and then that becomes the likelihood if you go outside. And that all needs to be unraveled. Anxiety goes on with rigidity and perfectionism. We try to control then what might happen next. So people start with that anxiety feeling, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to control the outcomes as much as possible. So you develop some rigidity tendencies. You develop some perfectionism tendencies on things. So, and of course that's in a whole other set of problems. Rigidity doesn't work real well in relationships. Perfectionism doesn't work real well because you can't be, and so you deal with that failure kind of a concept. Next thing, these two go together. The role of the prefrontal cortex, and this is one of these tomato things with amygdala. I've heard it amygdala, I've heard it amygdala. I was corrected 2 weeks ago. I'm talking about the amygdala, and the young fellow says, it's amygdala. I said, you little rat. No, I said, it's true. I've heard it both ways too. So tomato, pick what you like on that. So the role of the prefrontal cortex, the role is to assess the world. So that front part, the gray matter thing in the brain, we're assessing. We're going into our memory. Found this about memory too. One of the recent things on that is memory is generally in the hippocampus part of the brain like that, but they're finding recently it's everywhere. We have memory, there's memory centers everywhere around the brain, not just in one location. That's an interesting kind of a thing. So memory is very powerful. So we access our memory, which is everywhere, previous experiences, which is generally a good thing, but if it's fear-based, we got to work against that. So the prefrontal cortex is assessing at all times. We're coming up with snap judgments. We're coming up with considered judgments. And then the prefrontal cortex informs the midbrain part, the amygdala and the amygdala both, about what to do. And then that just responds. So if the front part of the brain says, danger, the amygdala goes, okay, and it shoots the chemicals into the system, ready for the fight, flight syndrome, ready for action, and there we go. So the key is in how you perceive the way the world is, like what's happening next. And it can happen extremely quickly. If you have a preconceived notion about, actually I was in DC over the weekend, so we're walking along the street and we saw a rat. Right? It was a nice sized rat. Haven't seen a rat in a while, and there was a rat that ran by and everything. And so I was cool, calm, and collected, of course. My wife went, ooh, a rat. And where did that ooh come from was the surprise, and a rat is not good. So it happens really quickly that the prefrontal cortex assessed, immediately shot it off to the amygdala, immediately had the reaction, and it can happen extremely quickly, which is a safety thing, which is nice, but to the extreme, we have problems on our hands. The thing I hate about anxiety too is it does create small lives for people that you contract your life. You just go to where your safe zone is and you stay. And so you're not going to take the risks. I'm not going to go outside. I'm not going to let you in. You seem like a nice person, but you're an outside stranger, so I better not take the risk. I better not take the chance. And so you end up living a very small life. And there's people with anxiety ridden today, young people, older people, who are living an extremely small life because fear of other people and fear of going out and what might happen into the world. And that's the problem with that. It's just not, there's no fullness in that.